welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and to go through this week's stories with me, I have friend and colleague, Mr. Momodu Mboj. Mr. Mboj, it's the usual welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Everly. I'm glad to be here.
Glad that you are here. And to our viewers, it's the same. Welcome to the program. And for anybody who's joining us for the first time, it's a simple program enough. 10 big stories that we've chosen from the week just gone by, and we kick them around somewhat. Some stories we spend a bit longer on than others. So we look at the National Assembly debating the acute kidney injury. We look at a conference looking at women's participation in politics in the Gambia. That one you'll have something to say about. Me, I'm into waste management big time, which tells you the kind of person I am. And there's a story about a community that haven't been sitting around waiting for somebody to come and do it. They've done it themselves. So lots more besides those ones. So let's get kicking, shall we? First one, the only place to start. When it was announced that 70 children had died in the Gambia from acute kidney injury, the whole world was discussing it. And there was one particular day when BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, NBC all carried the story. On that day, the Gambia's National Assembly sat till past midnight. Nobody said a word about kidney injury on that day. However, they seem to have made amends. Have a look, have a listen.
I believe that our country has been assaulted. This is an aggression against our people from greedy, unscrupulous people. The manufacturing, distribution, and importation of contaminated drugs is criminal, and government sees it that way. Government is on the verge of setting up a commission of inquiry into the issue. This, we believe, will help in identifying the problems and come up with recommendations to deal with the current problem and avert any future recurrences.
Mr. Mboj, viewers, you heard the Health Minister, Dr. Amadou Lamine Samate. And that speech he gave there came at the end of a sometimes fiery debate at the National Assembly, and you and I and others were saying about time too. And they finally got around to discussing it in some detail.
Absolutely, Ade. It seems like c'est la guerre. I mean, the metaphor he used there, he's been assaulted. This is an act of aggression, which is really reason of state to go to war, which I don't mind. I like the metaphor. Sure. That's it. Go to war against whom? Sure. He's mentioned the greedy and unscrupulous people, importers, manufacturers, and all the rest of it. Yeah. Granted, but then I thought, especially when he said we are on the verge of setting up a commission of inquiry. So in our report there we said we're going to have four different investigations. Then I thought, now that's an interesting one, because I remember questioning the PRO of the police force, Gambia Police Force, Madam Njai Jata, on the scope of their investigation and the time frame set. Couldn't tell me anything about the time frame that was apparently not part of it. Then I thought, do we really need four different investigations, really, which will sort of make it sort of diffused? Sure. For instance, we know that they're not going to submit their findings simultaneously. So what's going to happen? What would the government act on? What if the recommendations, some of them are irreconcilable? You really cannot preempt what they're going to recommend. Sure. Is it that each investigation would investigate particular aspects of the case? Which is the point I was going to come to. Because how is it being done?
I've heard of duplication of effort, but not quadruplication of effort. Because really what one would have wanted was you either set up a single commission of inquiry or a single investigation, and you have subcommittees that you devolve certain aspects to. So one looks at the control, medicines control aspect. One looks at the importation aspect. Different aspects one looks at, and then of course if you have the police heading it, they look at any possible criminal matters that might arise from it. But you don't have four separate ones investigating separately. It seems really they've missed a trick there.
I mean, for one to be thorough and exhaustive in our investigations, it is not about the number. Sure. It is about the quality the body I set up to investigate, how focused, concentrated and the like, get all the expertise you need on the panel.
Sure.
But here one wonders, do the people who are taking these decisions, do they really know what they're doing?
Yeah.
What are the merits of having all these four different investigations?
Well, this is it. I mean,
absolutely.
Yes, I mean, one of the ones is, of course, it's a National Assembly committee that's going to be looking at it, and there was every assembly member who got up, first of all, started by offering their condolences to the families, as you would expect. It's interesting because, we heard the health minister there talking about, greedy people and so on. He's kind of made up his mind. But one assembly member said, these investigations should come with an open mind. You shouldn't have already found people guilty before you've even started the investigation. And yet, if we're honest about it, many of us have made assumptions about greedy, unscrupulous people, about how on earth could a factory in India be producing drugs just for the Gambia. So we're already asking those questions and we're making those accusations already. I think it's human nature that we would, right? No surprise there, surely.
Exactly, and it was Musa Baji of Talinding Kunjang who said that, come on, guilt must not be assumed. Because I think previously, or another National Assembly member, Bakari Baji of Foni Bintang, said that people must take their responsibilities, especially the Ministry of Health. So that was when this person cautioned that guilt must not be assumed. Let us suspend judgment until we get all the facts and stuff. But I think I'll go further. Yes, of course, the manufacturers made out there in India. In the end, you have to defend. To defend yourself.
Yeah,
the world is just what is.
Of course.
To me, we hope that I will owe my neighbor duty of care internationally, globally. That's the feeling that we want. But in the end, I have to defend my borders.
Of course.
So the fifth column, since he brought in this metaphor of war, the fifth column, that enemy within, that's really where the problem is. That's the heart of the matter.
Sure.
You cannot change what's happening. You cannot influence to some extent what's happening out there in the world. But within your borders, you can have your defenses, as it were, to protect you against these things.
And those defenses are systems that work and protocols that have to be observed before things can be introduced into the country. That is what needs to be there.
There's a reason why certain procedures, processes work better than others. These things are not arbitrarily just delineated, this is written down.
Quite.
No, because we've seen them work. I mean, given human nature, given reason, you give me a certain set of facts, there's just so much I can extrapolate from that. It's just universal. You know what I mean? So when you don't follow good practice, as it were, you are not going to get the right outcomes. It's just as simple as that. Willing things to be right is not going to make it right. Even having the scruples. Yes, we need that. But in the end, I need, as I call it, virtuosity. Competence, technique in being able to implement, achieve things. It's not just goodwill, it takes something else.
There you are. Thanks for that. And viewers, we could spend the whole of this program debating this because it's an emotive subject. And, I wish I'd seen the terms of reference of all these four committees, but there you go, they're investigating. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our second story, a completely different matter, but again, one that's many people see as quite pressing. And that is to do with the Truth Commission report. It's been out for a while now. Government white paper has said we accept most of the recommendations, but people keep asking, what are you doing about it? Are you going to implement them? Have a look.
The government has taken measures to illustrate its commitment to implementing the accepted recommendations in the white paper. To this end, we have commenced the suspension of public officials adversely mentioned in the TRRC report. Recognizing that implementation of the recommendations carries a heavy financial burden, the government continues to engage with its partners to seek support for the post-TRRC agenda.
Mr. Mboj, I'm not a prophet, but I'm glad he mentioned the thing about seeking financial support, because I've been saying that if one looks at the report in its totality, there are certain financial burdens that will be placed upon the government to be able to deliver on these things. So the will might be there, but the finance might not be there, and that's what might scupper it. What's your own take on that?
Absolutely, but it was also interesting to hear from Esa Mbaifar, the lead counsel of the TRRC, said actually when you look at the recommendations, for most of them it's not really about money.
It's not about money. Yeah.
So there you realize about reform, it's about what institutions do, that sort of thing. So yes, but already you've seen that this is going to be a tough one.
Sure.
And people sort of get a sense of that. Because you've seen so many groups, occasional calls for the government to respect and implement the recommendations. Every so often you will hear a voice of either an individual or an organization. So it tells you that we were feeling some anxiety about it.
And the reason I chose that clip was for kind of reason what you've just said. And in the previous discussion, we talked about people not prejudging. For most of us who watched, we made up our minds because of what we heard about people. And we heard the speaker there in the clip we've just seen say that some public officials have been removed based on the fact. Now, that brings up the whole thing that, yes, I was adversely mentioned at the TRRC, but I've not gone through a process of being tried and convicted, and yet you're telling me you're removing me from my job. That's one of the difficulties. And again, that's got nothing to do with money. It just shows you how complex this whole thing is.
Absolutely. These are the difficult decisions that they're going to take regarding that. So, but this is really the key. In the end, they will be able to deliver on certain recommendations. They'll be able to implement some of them, but it will be asymmetrical.
Yeah, indeed.
They will probably do better on some things than others.
I think that's generally what tends to happen. They'll go for the low-hanging fruit.
We have the low-hanging fruit
that they can get. Yes.
But even the finances, when he said that Aliu Jallow there, that they've engaged
with the
international partners, I thought, ooh, that's a huge question mark, because there's really no reliable, as it were, source of finance for that. Depending on donors, that's not reliable at all.
That's right.
And again, when I look at the global economic situation we are in now, first. Secondly, our traditional donors, the politics is changing. Right-wing parties are taking over. This notion of international development, they're quite lukewarm about it, to say the least. That's the most charitable I can say.
And just 2 or 3 hours before we came into the studio, I read a piece on the BBC, which I shared on Twitter, on Facebook, and so on. It's something we've known all along, but it said that for the first time ever, the amount of, in quotes, foreign aid that was actually spent in Britain was greater than what went out. That it had never happened before. £4 billion in a single year was spent within Britain that they claimed was foreign aid. And yet it was spent within Britain. It actually exceeded what did go out. And that's astonishing. But that tells you about the donors and about how, you know, they will make these noises in Parliament, or we're giving aid to this, that. But when you scratch and look beneath the surface, it's not as easy. So yes, we might go to these partners, but they have constituencies that they have to play to, and they might not be so willing to give to, oh yes, Gambia, it would be nice if we give you some money to help you get out. But they say, no, we've got other things that we need to do here, and our electorate might say, no, don't do it. So it's going to be a really, really difficult one.
That's it. So the money element, we know that that's going to take a long time, wherever money is needed, as it were, to implement anything. But this is it, SFR's point. For me, this is the important thing. The reforms that we need to do, and the stuff that takes government action and willingness, that we can monitor and insist on it. And Jagan Gray Johnson, in his speech for Open Society, Open Society Foundations, I'm talking about the National Assembly.
Yeah, quite.
How important it will be in monitoring, as it were, what's going on. So this is really the key, and the TRRC have been tasked with sort of monitoring it as well. So these elements that need reform, as it were, these we must monitor them and insist on it. Without that institutional reform, nothing will happen.
Nothing can happen. And when we had a discussion on this in the office, and I said to the colleagues, I said, for me, it's not the money that's the difficult thing. When you talk about institutional reform, you're talking about mindset change. people have been embedded in a particular mindset and culture, they're not going to change overnight. And that is where you're going to find the difficulty, because those people, that is what they know, and that is how they've flourished. And now you're going to drag the carpet from under them. They will fight, they will resist, and that's the hardest fight possibly.
Absolutely, that will be the hardest. And then here is the issue. If the executive, the government hasn't put that as high up on the agenda, as it were, it is when you make it into an agenda, then you begin to put in the right reforms. It was quite interesting that one British historian, Neil Ferguson, talking about the great divergence. Apparently, when you go back to the 1400s, I mean, the average Chinese had a better living standard than the average European, that sort of thing. But afterwards, a lot of things happened along the way. And this institution building was key. In many ways.
To the change.
Absolutely, because we keep talking about this chicken and egg question. Should the people change first before institutions will change? Or would the institutions come and change people? But you begin to realize that this is why you need strong leadership. Great people like Napoleon and others, Bismarck, the reason why they're great is that they come and form institutions. With the institutions, then you begin to regulate my behavior. Not necessarily my belief. You see, Lee Kuan Yew also made that point.
Exactly.
We will believe whatever. But in public, when I use public institutions, I change, I adapt my behavior. That's all that you can do, really. So one must focus on the key underlying elements. People have been doing studies on this, but without that institutional change, you're not going to see much. This is what we mean when we say governance, essentially.
Exactly. Thank you for that. So, tough days ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mbodj. And now on to our third story. I made this joke once in the office very loosely and very cruelly, because we did a story on farmers and they were complaining about a whole rash of things. And I said to my colleague Troy, I think it was, I said, farmers complain about everything. They'll always find something to complain about. So to the farmers watching, I apologize. But guess what? They are complaining about something. Have a look.
The thing that is threatening us right now is unstoppable rain. Rain is still coming. That is something which we think could also have some negative impact to our crops, because as you can see, what we do, the only mechanism we have right now is when we harvest them, we have to separate them and to place them into pieces so that we will not be able to we cannot put them together, because the moment we put them together and the rain comes, it will have the groundnut will have so many bad groundnuts.
Now, I'm being slightly naughty there, including that one, so we probably won't spend too much time on it. But we went into October, past the middle of October, and we were still having rainfall. And of course, these were the same farmers who were complaining that we weren't getting enough rain. Mr. Mbodj, as I said, it's a bit naughty of me putting it there, but there's a serious point to it, and that's why I included it, and that's to do with possibly climate change and the changing in weather patterns. We should have expected the rains to have stopped long before they did, and that really is something we need to take on board.
Absolutely. Rain in October. Well, I just thought, the human condition. Too little is not good. Too much is not good either. We just need that equilibrium.
I told the colleagues, I said, the one thing we have in all our DNAs, regardless of where you are, we are never satisfied with whatever we have. And I think that probably shows
really
that.
What he said. Well, this is the LRR.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where we visited.
That's right.
We'll see how many different areas.
Indeed.
How much damage, if at all, it will make overall. That's because already with the high price of fertilizer, that's one of the interviewees.
It's one of the things that they talked about. Yeah.
He said really he needed 30 bags. But because of the price, he could just buy 10. So it will be interesting to see how widespread that is. Most of them really...
Because most of the broadcasts we've done have been about the price of the fertilizer that people have been complaining about. And so as you said there, that's quite a drop from somebody who would normally buy 30, saying, I've only bought 10. how many more are in a similar position, and how is that going to impact on the yield this year?
That was it. That was only one example, but I was just wondering how representative is that across. I expected, but commonsensically, if you know what I mean, because of the high price, I imagine a lot of people
will say, I can't afford what I got last year.
So that's it. So they will produce less.
Sure.
So yes, this year is going to be quite interesting. We also heard there one of the interviewees saying that when it comes time for them to buy our peanuts, our groundnuts, absolutely, we hope to get a good price. That would also be quite interesting to see what happens really, because most of them sort of underproducing, if you like, so the income would go down.
Drop,
so they would demand high prices really
to make up for
that. So what would government do about that? It will be very interesting to see. But they made on one point, they hope the government wouldn't just go and impose a price.
That's right.
They would negotiate. They would go and meet them, and they talk about it and sort of come to a kind of compromise price, we hope.
Yeah, we certainly hope so, and we wish them well in those negotiations. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our fourth story. If you've observed Gambian politics, you will know that women's representation is pretty low, and so almost every week there's a seminar, conference, workshop about it. Somebody's trying to do something about it. Here's the latest. Have a look.
Bay is a former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly.
What is left is for us to be confident enough, to be committed enough, to be very genuine women who support each other to ensure that we get exactly what we are supposed to.
Mr. Mboj, a recipe there, and she used the word enough. Is what she said enough? Confident enough? Committed enough? Genuine enough? We need a lot more than that, surely, to make this, and again, I steal your word, revolutionize what needs to happen to increase representation.
Absolutely, and these words, they cannot be commandeered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be courageous, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that.
Quite.
It's always a process, depends on how you were brought up, depends on the wider culture, it depends on so many variables that are not in your hands. This is quite crucial. Your parents, your home, or your school, they build your confidence, you never really bring it onto yourself. We're dealing here with a societal issue. Look at the constitutional amendment bill.
Yeah, quite.
You know, people in parliament are just reflective of what we are, representative of what we are. So we all know that most of them deliberately stayed away for one of the readings.
That's right.
So this is it.
Sure.
Either you force the issue, sort of including quotas. I have to say personally, I approve of quotas. That's really how you force the issue. Otherwise, this is the change we're talking about, that evolution we're talking about. Well, these things, they come in fits and starts,
and sometimes they will never come just because you wish for it to happen. You have to do something to make it happen, because it's a radical change that needs to happen. And unless you do something radical, then that radical change is not going to happen.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you can be committed, you can be genuine, you could be confident and so on. But if the people who are blocking your way and they're stopping bills going through Parliament or still blocking those bills, you can be as confident and as committed as you want. Nothing will change.
And the behavior in the National Assembly, all it tells me is that my society is not ready for that. We can have all the workshops that we want. We can do all sorts of things.
Those people are a reflection of the society. And even
absolutely.
some of the things they say in the House tells you that they are just reflecting their constituency.
The honourable member for Banjul South, I mean, she's really just a pioneer. She's the figurehead, as it were, of that movement to pass this bill into law.
That's right.
I think she talked about bringing back, reviving this bill. One can just see that it will be scuppered again in many ways. So it seems that somehow the society is not ready for that. And it really hurts to say that, because I would have thought that we were more progressive, what I thought the society was like. But something happened along the way. I think we've taken a few steps back in many ways.
And for me, the depression comes in the fact that when I hear young people under 30 subscribing to some of the views that I would have expected somebody 70 or 80 to be expressing about, why there should not be quotas and why you should think the status quo should exist and remain, then I get worried as to where this change in culture is coming from.
Sort of that very narrow, closed view, really, which has now sort of lost all intellectual credibility, really. Nobody will say some of the sexist things we believe. Nobody will say it seriously.
Yeah, quite.
You know, intellectually, that kind of thinking has sort of lost its hold on us. But it's just where Gambia is.
Sure.
Remember, one of the speakers there said, Gambia should not be left behind in the global efforts to bring about this gender parity. So that tells we are behind. Something happened here along the way that has just dragged us back. The general common view now, to my mind, is not progressive.
Sure. It's not progressive. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj, and slightly depressing note to end on. But it takes us to our fifth story, which will take us halfway. And at the top of the show, I said, you know, waste management is something that I obsess over, I have to say. And so I was delighted to have our reporter bring this story, and I'm delighted to bring it to you now. What's it about? Have a look.
This initiative, he added, is complementing local council in waste collection and management.
Community of Diabu coming together and then having their dump site, you know, fence all over, so that they are able to manage their waste properly. This is something that is definitely very laudable, and this is really in line with the national development goals that we have. That is us living in a very healthy environment, which is a fundamental human right. So this is a very good initiative that we are very much happy. Like this is the responsibility of councils. Actually, the agency is a coordinating institution. We coordinate environmental issues, and waste component is a very fundamental component. So therefore, the community having this kind of initiative is really appreciated.
I hold my hands up and I say, every time I bring a story like this, there's a kind of ulterior motive. One is to celebrate the fact that a community has not, we've heard it said there, that it's the responsibility of the council, and yet the community got fed up waiting for the council to do it. So they decided to do it. And the reason I bring stories like this is I want to say to others who are in a similar position, go thou and do likewise. You can also do what they've done. And that's why I champion things like this. Really, really pleased to see something like this.
Absolutely. Community organizations, when you look at really, democracy, how democracy emerged, really, community organizations, really, that's where it begins.
Yeah,
quite extraordinary.
Yes.
We are in a situation now where what we call the statutory services, they're not really working. You know what I mean? They're not really working when you look around.
Yeah.
So these community-led initiatives, organizations, as it were, delivering social services. Perhaps that is somewhere CSOs can come in and be more facilitative in this thing, helping communities to form groups, organizations, sort of like the politicization, as it were. Here, when we say political, we're talking about party politics. We're just talking about that civic mindedness.
Yes, indeed.
That's
indeed.
really what
because what they've done is that
exactly.
They've identified a site, they've gone out and got the site, they've built a perimeter wall, but more than that, they bought a truck to go around and collect rubbish in the community and bring it to this site where it can be disposed of properly. And amazing.
That's really. It. And just one hopes that they've got the administrative structures in place as well. This is what we're talking about, having good technique in
this is it,
where inputs can give
for
you the
it
right
to function
outputs,
and become systematic.
Systematic, and the sustainability of it. So in the end, you realize, I think, sustainability really is local. It depends on what the local does.
Indeed.
So once they've got the structures in place administratively, everybody knows to whom you are accountable, what you're supposed to do, your responsibilities. Everybody's got responsibilities, and that will be quite interesting. Perhaps you'll begin to see that other communities will begin to imitate. This is why you want some of these stories to be successful. Then others would emulate.
And we want people to get in touch with us and say, put us in touch with those people. Absolutely. So we can find out how they did it.
How do we do this? Exactly.
Thank you for that. And that takes us, after that fifth story, nicely to the break. And after the break, we'll have 5 more stories. Don't go away. Join us after this break.
fastest growing GSM company in the Gambia. QCell has the widest 4G plus coverage in the country, 3 times faster internet speed than our competitors. So switch now and dial *335# and enjoy what true 4G feels like. QCell, Gambia's trusted network.
Q Money, the biggest mobile money service in the Gambia, has taken mobile banking to the next level. Now, you can link your Q Money wallet with your bank account. Yes, link your Ajib or EcoBank accounts with your Q Money wallet and get instant access to your cash anytime. No need to queue at the bank anymore. Transfer funds from your bank account to your wallet or your wallet to your bank account using Q Money Bank Link is the fastest, most secure, and convenient way to transfer funds between your wallet and bank account. For more information, call our customer care on 133. Q Money, Sunyu Kalpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Adi Darami, and here going through the stories with me is friend and colleague Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, thank you for your interjections so far. Thank you.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. And to our viewers, I always say this, if you're only joining us now, you've missed 5 cracking stories, but hey, don't switch off. 5 cracking stories still to go. Now, the United Nations, I don't think they've ever been as busy as they have been recently. And 24th of October every year is United Nations Day. And it gives us a chance to think and reflect on what the UN is all about. Have a look.
The UN team in the Gambia stands firm to continue to support the government and people of the Gambia to take concrete actions on climate change, adaptation, and disaster risk management. We will intensify our work to address challenges related to countering the increase in inequalities and ensuring that the COVID-19 recovery is inclusive with active participation of women, youth, persons with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups to hasten the full potential of every person everywhere.
That clip I chose to give a flavor of some of what the UN does. And earlier this year, I decided to subscribe to the UN daily feed. My God, Mr. Mboj, they have 10 or 20 meetings and sessions of all sorts every day. And so I get a daily feed. Sometimes they even on a Sunday. And so I go through them and look for any interesting ones. But as I said, I chose that clip just to give a kind of some of the scope of the UN, but they've been really, really busy. I mean, we did something around the UN General Assembly, but it's much more than that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, it's a bold concept, the notion of the UN, even before that, the League of Nations, remember, just after the Second World War. Yeah. Quite a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
We should be, I don't know, we should be surprised that it is still existing.
And there are pressures.
There are pressures.
Because, for example, the most high-profile ones are the General Assembly and the Security Council. Security Council is kind of locked down and Africa is kind of excluded from it. They take decisions and they veto ones they don't like and so on. And sometimes people think it's dysfunctional because of that, because you've given too much power to these entities and these countries, you know. And as I said, Africa is excluded, but there are lots of other things that the UN does. And as you said, a bold concept, even the mere existence of it.
And its current structure. And it couldn't have been otherwise. Yeah. International politics is about power. It's high time we wake up to that. Sure. All that moral sort of evaluation. Politics and morality, we are talking about the same thing here, even though that is some morality in politics, but in the end it's about interest.
Yeah, sure.
That's what's in my interest and about power. So it was bound to be like that.
Sure.
So I have to be powerful so that I can force the issue.
As I said.
Yes. See, China wasn't always there.
Yeah, quite.
That's it. It grew its economy, it became powerful, then it forced the issue.
Indeed.
So there's no point just sitting on the sidelines and crying over, you know, not being part of the club. man, you don't have it.
We don't have the power
there's no skin to your game. You're not going to go in.
Well, it's true.
So this is it. I think Dr. Hammarskjöld, isn't it? I think he got it right when he said, the UN is not here to take anybody to heaven. It is to save us from hell. And that's essentially what it does. It reflects the power relations, as it were. There are some things in some areas that it does well. Humanitarian relief, trying to negotiate peace and the like. But the facts of power, there's really nothing that the UN can do. So let's just take it for what it is. And see how we can make it more efficient in what it can do well.
Indeed.
And that sort of thing. Because what's going to change the Security Council, it's not going to be the UN, it's going to be national politics elsewhere.
It really is. And interesting you mentioned Hammarskjöld there. I think I'm right in saying the only UN Secretary General to die whilst doing something in his duty.
Absolutely.
He went to visit Congo
during
the war there, and his plane was shot down. And he died there. But you're right. I mean, it is about power, and it is about time that we accept the reality of it, and how do we work within that reality. Those of us who were screaming and crying and say, oh, we want a seat at the table, and they're like you said, 30, 40 years ago, China were not there. How did they get that seat at the table? They did something radical, they did something bold, and now they have to be there. They cannot be otherwise. But it's a long way to go, but still interesting organization.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe what we can wish for, because in the past we've had strong secretaries general.
Sure.
Who would stand up to the US sometimes, to these big powers.
Boutros Ghali.
That's it.
Kofi Annan at times.
So you can have these firm, strong leaders who can make a difference. But we have to accept that it is a force for good.
Indeed.
In the end, really, when you sort of do the ledger, you look at the ledger, the credit and debit, nothing is a force for good, and we should celebrate it.
I think so, yeah. Thanks for that, Mr. Mboj. And on to our seventh story, not about the UN, but about the US. United States Embassy in the Gambia. It's been on Kairaba Avenue for many years, which is where our office is, but they are about to be relocated. And it hasn't gone down unnoticed or without some people raising objections. Why? Well, have a look at this clip.
One of the things that we want to do is to work with these activists and to work with people who are concerned about the environment, have them be advisors for us so that we are certain that we are not going to be negatively impacting that space that's so important to the Gambian people.
And the space she's talked about not negatively impacting is the Monkey Park. And Mr. Mboj, the rumor, if you watch and listen to and read what's on social media, is that they're going to take over this Monkey Park, they're going to close it down. And some of my colleagues wanted to kind of join the fight. And I said, by a show of hands, how many of you have been to the Monkey Park? Nobody. So I chose this clip being slightly mischievous because I wanted it to be on record and clear that the Monkey Park is not going to be taken away, smashed, rolled over. They've said not only will they not take it over, it will not be impacted, and they're being quite conscious about it. It's quite a huge amount, 25 acres. So you wonder what they're going to build on 25 acres when you look at where they have now on Kairaba Avenue, which is rented, we've since learned, which surprised everybody. But now something else. So there did need to be some sort of clarification, but I don't think that's going to stop some of the people, because some of the activists have already issued press releases saying that, yes, it is the Monkey Park, but we actually went there to see where it was, and it's not. But that's not going to satisfy some people, is it?
Absolutely. And let's be honest with ourselves. We don't go to parks.
Quite.
That was really for tourists.
Yeah.
Not for local consumption. Perhaps you may have schools decide to go and visit it,
exactly.
that sort of thing.
Sure.
But generally, we don't do that.
Yes, it's that.
Really. Yeah. So now it's quite trendy now to talk about conservation and that sort of thing.
And I think people who are objecting in the office they liked the fact that it was there.
Absolutely.
Even if they didn't visit it, they wanted it to be there.
That's it. But of course, we had the Banjul Declaration since 1977. So we've been thinking like that for a long time.
Sure.
So now that's it. They've already taken bits of it, haven't they? For the South Africa conference, for the conference center, right. That also caused also the furore that was engendered by it. So this is it. Quite interesting. They've been on Carabao for goodness for forever. Yes. I mean, renting. Who would have?
Who knew? Who knew?
By now, move. But it was also quite interesting that the location where they are given is currently tenanted by the West Africa Livestock Innovation, and they will be relocated. They will be relocated, and the cost would be borne by the Americans. By the Americans. That would be. Sure. Quite interesting.
So the people involved in this has been the Attorney General's office, acting on behalf of the government, as well as the United States Embassy. And I think they have their work cut out, because I suspect they're going to have to be doing monthly or bi-monthly updates to kind of assuage people's fears and the kind of activism that seems to be growing up around it. And if anybody doesn't believe me, go on any social media type Monkey Park Gambia, and you'll see all the complaints. Yeah. So,
Adi, whatever they're going to do will be really what we allow them to do.
Well, indeed.
You see, sometimes.
But I think that's been part of the complaint, because if you look at some of the things they've said, oh, we've just lay down and let them just walk all over us and so on. And so some of the activists who were kind of raising the concerns are saying that we must not let this happen. So they've come out, they've said that lots of Gambians will be involved in building the site. And because of the sheer size of it, lots of Gambians will be employed there. As I keep saying, 25 acres is what we're talking about. It's huge. So,
Absolutely. And this is what they've said. Then we'll see what actually is going to happen, how many Gambians would be employed, and that sort of thing. I mean, for us by now, we're used to hearing all sorts of promises. Aren't we? I mean, highfalutin stuff sometimes. There's so much. But again, when it comes to delivery, the outcomes, people really do not see much. So here again, one will suspend judgment and see what happens. We get excited too quickly. One shouldn't.
We shouldn't, and certainly this is one that we need to keep an eye on. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now to story number 8. Just watching this story left me exhausted. Why? Have a look.
Juju Bajan, Deputy Commissioner of the Drug Law Enforcement Agency. She urges and encourages communities to join the event.
This work for health is very important. As you know, we are human beings. Without health, we cannot do nothing. Health is also part of in our life. That's why we joined this group to make this work for health. It's only the security and the CEO of Farafenni Hospital and some of the community members who come to join us. So I'm urging the community to come out and join us with full hands. Maybe every fortnight we can do this kind of routine every fortnight to make this work for health fruitful.
There you are. Work for Health, Mr. Mboj. I know I keep mentioning Cape Verde all the time, but I'll mention it briefly this time. When I started going to Cape Verde 7-8 years ago, the thing that struck me was that every evening after families had had their meal, they'd sit around in the house for an hour, and then they'd take to the streets and start jogging. I used to just watch them, I have to be honest. After all, I go on holiday, I'm there on holiday, I'm not there to exercise. But it has become a habit, and so you see people in their 70s and 80s, and they're jogging. And so when I saw this in URR, it was, I thought, oh, okay, healthy stuff. What about you? Do you manage to get out and exercise much or at all?
Well, it's been a while that I haven't gone for an exercise, but again, I walk a lot.
Right.
I do not own a car, so I sort of quite active, not sedentary. That's the terrible bit. You see, when I watched it, it occurred to me that, okay, the publicity is fine, you know, calling the media, getting the job and stuff. Then I would love to ask them, actually, how frequently do you work out? Apart from this, they have a regime.
Well, she kind of gave us a hint that she would like to see it every couple of weeks, because when we spoke to our reporter, it's a new thing that they're starting, and they want it to be ongoing. And I have to say, for my own sake, I used to exercise a lot. I don't now. I work 6 maybe even 7 days a week. And I have to give thanks to my friend and landlord, Abdul Njai, who kind of drags me out every Sunday and says, let's go for a 3-mile walk, just so that we're not sedentary all the time. Having said that, when it's been rainy and muddy, because of where we live, we can't do that. But now that it's getting drier, we'll resume. But I have to say, I come back sweating and I'd feel good, I'd shower and so on. I think there's also that thing where psychologically you feel good when you do something like that.
Absolutely. You know? But you realize that it's a habit.
Yeah, sure.
That's really what this is. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
As it were. If it is not part of it, you're really going to work very, very hard to assimilate it. As it were. We've seen it. Somebody will start. Give him or her a week or two, they will stop.
And then they've got, and we've had ones where people have started with 100.
All the time.
And then by the 4th or 5th one, they're down to 10 people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it always happens. So it's a habit.
Sure.
As long as one understands it that way, when it's really difficult, that's where you should keep going. To change one habit for another, it's a difficult process. So it's not, you just don't will it into being. You work hard at it.
It's very hard stuff. But before anybody takes to jogging or running or anything, speak to your doctor or go and get checked and tested so you're not doing something that's going to actually be detrimental. Or if you are going to do it, start gently.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And on to our penultimate story, story number 9. Big story across the world. What happened? Britain. First ever British Asian Prime Minister. Have a look.
The eldest of 3 children, Rishi Sunak, was born on the 12th of May 1980 in Southampton, United Kingdom, to African-born Hindus of Indian descent. His father, a medical doctor, was born in Kenya, and his mother, a pharmacist in Tanzania. Sunak attended England's oldest public school, Winchester College. Elsewhere, the schools are called private schools, where he became the first Indian origin head boy and was editor of the school paper. He went on to obtain a first-class degree in philosophy, politics and economics at Oxford and an MBA at Stanford University, USA, where he met his future wife, Akshata Murthy, daughter of one of the founders of Infosys Limited, an Indian multinational technology company. Before turning to politics, he had worked in investment banking and hedge funds.
Investment banking, hedge funds, public school boy, as I am. I had that same experience. As you said, they call them private schools
Absolutely.
elsewhere. And also lots of historic firsts, obviously, including richest ever Prime Minister in Britain. Wife is close to be billionaire, it is alleged. But he's been claimed by everybody, by India, by Tanzania, by Kenya, and just everybody says this is Britain's Obama moment. Is it?
The whole empire.
It's claimed.
It's really been claimed by the whole empire. I mean, it resonates, as it were, doesn't it, with empire.
Sure.
Exactly. There's this phrase they call the cunning of reason. I've decided to adapt it, the cunning of history.
Right.
Extraordinary. Here, this investment banker, those financing inside out, also did economics at university at a period that Britain is facing this financial crisis.
Sure. Indeed.
Look at even the nature of how he came into power. First, with Lynn Truss defeated and all of that. Then the elite in 1922 committee had to come up, design a strategy.
You have to have 100 before you get on the ballot.
They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew who they wanted to keep out. So this is it. But look at him.
Sure.
Elite schools.
Quite.
Oxford. He is so Tory.
Well,
see, that's the element that we missed. Exactly. The lifestyle, the outlook is so Tory.
Sure.
I mean, look at him. He voted for Brexit. And they're going to come up with tough immigration laws. I mean, the irony. You're beginning to see these things in
fact, we had this discussion, and I had it with my brother who's watching this program. And I said, the ones who seem to make the loudest noise now about immigration are the children of immigrants. It's almost as if they want to prove that I'm not like them. I'm not like those people who are trying to, in fact, my brother, I had to laugh at him the other day because they've moved in a lot of immigrants and refugees locally to him. And so they're only allowing 10 of them at a time into the shops. And he's been living there for 35 years. And he turned up and they said, do you have your coupons? He said, what the hell are you talking about? And they thought he was some Senegalese refugee. He was really, and again, he voted for Brexit, by the way. So
Absolutely.
he was not amused. But
and
you're right.
the other one,
yeah.
Kwasi
Kwarteng,
Eton, Cambridge, so Tory.
Yeah.
So I hope this is a good lesson that it's not about your skin color.
Yeah.
It's about much more substantial
Well, this
stuff.
is it, because if you look at the makeup now of the two main parties, Conservative Party and Labour Party, for those looking from the outside for many years, they'd always assumed that Labour Party was the party that immigrants actually aspired to or belonged to. And yet if you look at the makeup of their members of parliament, the Conservatives have way more ethnic minority MPs than Labour in the current parliament, way more, and that's never happened before until recently.
Very curious, yeah. Most ethnic minorities in Britain tend to gravitate towards Labour. I remember when I first got there in the household, everybody was supporting Labour. I said, why? But nobody could really tell me the reason. They were just Labour. Well, I went for Margaret Thatcher. I was supporting the Conservatives, just to be bloody-minded as well. So, but this is it. But again, Labour has really never produced a black leader or any ethnic minority or anything at all. The Conservatives, the party on the right, so the general perception is that they are not very welcoming of immigrants. Yet, first female, when it comes to minorities, first female prime minister, they've got three already. Look at it now, Rishi Sunak, and then as Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. British politics is a curious one.
Flipped on its head.
Yes,
and, for all those reasons, I would never vote Tory and so on. But there's a kind of perverse side of me that welcomes him because he was quite instructive when he was up against Liz Truss and others. And when on that occasion it went to the party membership, even though he came across as the best qualified, they didn't vote for him. They went for Liz Truss.
Extraordinary.
And as you said,
it is easy to say race. The first thought that comes into my head.
Immediately there were stories. There were stories of people resigning from the party when he became prime minister, or when it was confirmed that he would be the only person running. And yet Trevor Noah, the South African comedian, is in the press all over Britain today, saying that he claimed that all of Britain is racist because of how they reacted to him. And he said, no, read what I said or listen to what I said. I said, some are racist and they didn't like him. He said, and it's a fact, and it is a fact.
Well, it also tells me something very interesting here about democracy. In Britain, really, the elites, they rule.
Yes.
There is the illusion of... Absolutely. We all knew why the 1922 committee decided to put the threshold at 100. They knew the person they wanted to keep out. Had he been part of it and they've taken it to the grassroots, he would have won.
Quite.
Wasn't it Churchill? I keep on saying this, what Churchill said. I mean, the biggest argument against democracy is 5 minutes with your average voter. We all know that. So this is it. They played the game that they needed to play. They knew that out of the lot, Sunak was really the most qualified. That's it. The cunning of history. They forced their hand. America. They turned around. They were in trouble. Who was the most talented? Happened to be a black person. Guy. What can you do? You have to sit in there. I love history.
Well done. So congrats, Rishi Sunak, or I won't call whatever President Biden called him. But anyway, thank you for that. And now on to our last story, and we don't have much time for this, but it's a serious one, and it's Ebola in Uganda. Previously it had been in the regions, but now it has reached the capital city, Kampala. Have a look.
Uganda's health minister, Jane Ruth Essing, expressed concern about transmission of the virus in urban areas where the population is highly mobile. Though the identities of the siblings have not been revealed, the school they attend has been identified and remains open. There is a great fear that the virus will spread faster in Kampala and to other countries as the economic hub of Uganda. In the past, The Ebola epidemic hugely impacted Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia in West Africa. A total of 28,616 cases and 11,310 deaths were reported in these countries. Nearly 20% of all cases occurred in children under 15 years of age, and an estimated 30,000 children became orphans during the outbreak.
Mr. Mboj, Ebola, devastating, doesn't kill as many people as malaria and so on, but whoever gets it is almost under a death sentence. And so now it's reached Kampala. And now people are criticizing Museveni, saying that you should have quarantined the area where it was and said, if you're in that, you can't leave. But of course, people travel back and forth, and that is apparently what happened. 6 members of the same family all have it, and because a relative from worst affected area came to visit them. And now there's panic in the capital city.
The mortality rate of this disease is scary. It's scary. In ways, it kills half of the people it infects.
That's right.
But this is the case. With the Ebola recently, the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've had other epidemics, and we are told that we'll have more of these things.
Yeah, sure.
What we should do, it is about securing your health systems.
Sure.
I think this is really what the key is. Really,
yes.
Never mind what's going on in Kampala, in Uganda. We're sure they will try to do the best that they can. But now we're beginning to hear the sirens.
Sure.
You know, they've been allowed for a long time now. So we must strengthen this, because we'll be facing these things all the time, these pandemics or epidemics and that sort of thing. This is really the lesson that we should learn. It's the only lesson that we can learn.
Thank you, and let's hope we have learned that lesson. And just to say in closing, COVID-19 has not gone away. As I speak, Wuhan has just been shut down in China, and today, Canada reported 28,000 new COVID-19 cases. Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interjection so far. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Until the next time, bye.